King of the Harem Heaven, Epilogue. The logs of the roundhouse harem shack on High Island have rotted back into the earth from which they grew. In the Israelite colony at Bent Harbor, it's slowly melting back into the society that spawned it. Not once, since the death of Benjamin Franklin Purnell, has the slightest hint of scandal come to the house of David. When the resurrection attempt failed, Judge H.T. Dewhurst immediately began a long, hard fight to have the decision to abolish the colony reversed by the higher courts. Expertly and eloquently, he argued that many of the little people would be helpless in the outside world. On June 3, 1929, the Michigan Supreme Court handed down its decision. It stated that Judge Fedd's ruling had been the proper one, that there could be no reasonable doubt of King Ben's guilt. But it also stated that the abolishing the colony as a menace to public morals was no longer necessary. A higher power had abolished the real menace. Then a full-scale fight for control of the $10 million kingdom exploded. The Attorney General ventured the opinion that Ben's legal wife Angelina was the correct heir. And for a time, it seemed that the little old mountain lady would inherit the vast fortune. But Judge Dewhurst managed to block this in the courts, arguing that the Israelite property should remain with those who donated it and multiplied it with their labor. Queen Mary suddenly realized that Dewhurst was becoming increasingly powerful in the cult. With the help of Francis Thorpe, she tried to oust him. Instead, she found herself ousted. The office staff, the key pillars, all were loyal to Dewhurst. Of the 500 Israelites who remained in the colony, no more than 200 supported Mary Purnell. She went into court in an attempt to regain control, but she was no match for the former judge there. In 1930, she finally accepted an outside settlement, receiving a hotel and some farmland and an undisclosed but not too sizable share of the cash in Ben's vaults. She led her followers out of the original colony, building a new set of smaller, cheaper dwellings such a short distance down the road that most tourists think of both colonies as a single community. Calling themselves the Israelite House of David, as reorganized by Mary Purnell, the Queen's followers have kept alive the flying roller religion, developing among themselves the fiction that Mary was the co-author of Ben's sacred writings, more or less raising her to divine status. She invested a good share of the settlement she received in a radio station and a sewage disposal plant, and her group soon became comfortably well off. But it was the Dewhurst faction that prospered most sensationally. With the ball team and the park as going enterprises, the judge invested in a wide variety of concerns: a giant fruit canning plant, greenhouses, a 72-unit motel, a service station, a used car lot, even a fine nightclub complete with a floor show and a long-haired bearded jazz band. When Dewhurst died in October 1947, his followers had an income of well over $1 million a year. Neither group has encouraged converts in recent years. Both are growing steadily smaller, with no young people among them. Within a decade or so, the strange twisted story begun some 168 years ago by an English scrub woman will fade to its anticlimactic ending. Mary Purnell lived to the age of 91, passing away in August of 1953. "Sister Mary will be raised immortal," an Israelite woman sobbed to the handful of reporters who covered the occasion. "She taught us life, not death." "No one can ever take her place," a white-bearded, long-haired pillar agreed. The little people of the sect were silent, just as they'd been silent while their king was making headlines, just as they'd been silent when his harem girls had come back in anger to topple him. They went on leading the only life they knew, waiting for the only thing that held meaning for them, the millennium, the time of rest and reward. But when they hoped for the man who originally rallied them at Bent Harbor to rise from the dead and lead them again, they must look down the street to the colony of the hated Dewhurst adherents, the worldly Danites who are more interested in making money than preserving the true faith, for they have the prophet's body, still enshrined at Diamond House. Benjamin Franklin Purnell is in remarkably good condition, For a $13,000 preserving job was done on his body by a St. Louis man who claimed to have discovered and improved upon ancient Egyptian methods. His hands are clasped across his chest. A baby pink ribbon is tied in his long white hair. Embalming fluid has been in his vein for 32 years, but his eyes still seem to be smiling. The end.